we were shipped to Nashville, Tennessee for classification. Then we went to Montgomery, Alabama for pre-flight, and that was a hectic time. They give us 2 years of college in 2 months, and it was pretty rough. We were up and about all day and all night. It seemed like going to school, and it was quite an experience, but I was really, really happy to make the pilot list. So our next stop was to wait to go to a field where we could start training as pilots, which I did. No, from the primary flight training in those old biplanes, we went to a basic. Primary was a civilian field. Basic was we were back in the Army, and we flew a single-engine metal airplane with. It was a step up from the primary, and we flew that for a while, and then we moved on to advanced training. And at that time, all along the way, they were asking us what we wanted to fly when we graduated. They separated us when we went to advanced. Those that asked for multi-engine airplanes went to a field in Indiana, and we graduated out of that school and were commissioned and rated as pilots. We crewed up. We got our first crew put together. I was a co-pilot, and there were 10 members on the crew. There were 4 officers, pilot, co-pilot, navigator, and bombardier, and the rest were gunners and aerial engineers. And we were put together, and we stayed together from that point on. When we went overseas, I realize now just how green and inexperienced we were, but they sent us across. We flew down through South America and then went across the Atlantic and into Africa and then back up through Africa. We were assigned to the 8th Air Force, and they're flying out of England. And we flew up there, and 8th Air Force was a major league of the air combat. That was where all the big majority of our opposition was there in France and Belgium and whatnot. And all the towns had a lot of anti-aircraft guns around them, and they had mobile anti-aircraft, so they'd move around so we couldn't keep them plotted where they were. But we would fly and bomb different targets, strategic and tactical. After I got there, we first started going all the way to Berlin, which was a long, long mission and over a lot of enemy territory. In 1943, people that were doing the same kind of flying, their chances of surviving and coming home were kind of slim, because they would have many missions when they'd lose 10% of the airplanes they put up. And it doesn't take much of a mathematician to figure out 25 missions at 10% each mission. Your chance is pretty slim. They lost a lot of people. And it was better when we got there, because we'd got fighters that could accompany us all the way to the target, and they'd kind of whip the German fighters. There was enough opposition just from the anti-aircraft guns to keep it interesting.
Was your plane hit?
Oh, many times, yeah. It was kind of amazing. And to me now, when I think back, how green everybody was in the neighborhood of 20 years old. You know, just kids that were in high school the year before, you know. And then to send somebody out like that with a small amount of flying time in the airplane they were using, in retrospect, I wonder how it turned out as well as it did. It never crossed our mind that we might lose. We never give that any thought. And I don't know, there was a time when they contemplated discontinuing daylight bombing out of England because of the losses. it was kind of nip and tuck for a while.
Yeah.
And the English wouldn't do it. They bombed at night. They thought we were crazy to try to go out in daytime. Everybody could see us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Well, it gave us a chance to hit our targets a lot better than English. They just carpet bombed, area bombed, where we always were after a military target. Sometimes we'd miss and hit civilians and whatnot, but never intentionally. It never occurred to me that what we were dropping was killing people on the ground. It was kind of an impersonal thing. But later, after I saw this bombing of the mural building in Oklahoma and how all the kids that were killed and whatnot in that, I got thinking about that. And it might have bothered me at the time if I hadn't been so young, I guess.
Yeah.
When we first started, we had a quota of 25 missions we had to fly, and then they would rotate us, send us back to the States. But as they got a little easier, why they kept stepping up the number of missions, so I wound up flying 32. But I did that in about 2.5 months. And I was pretty well, I called it flak happy at that time. Yeah, there was a considerable amount of stress, and some of it was because of the rapidity of our piling up the missions after the D-Day. Why, I flew 13 missions in 11 days. And you got pretty well flak happy or something there. And I lived in a big barracks with officers from other crews, and there was, in their sleep, they were hollering and get out, and all this. And looking back on it, I was saying we were getting pretty owly with each other and whatnot, and it was just stress. After 2.5 months of flying missions, I was sent back to the States and went through an instructor's school and taught flying till the end of the war.